Next chapter of Sky Song. Chapter 12, Esker. Esker crouched on a stone in the middle of the river, squinting against the glare of the morning sun. She didn't like being out in the open, especially because, until just a few moments before, the valley had been ringing with the Ice Queen's anthem, and Esker kept imagining tusk guards sent to drag her back to Winterfang, cresting the summits of the surrounding hills. But none came, and she needed to prove to herself that on her first morning here she could find food. The water rushed around her, clear and sparkling, and, she hoped, full of fish, because she couldn't let the eagle do all her hunting. That would be rude. And who knew how long it planned to stay? Maybe it had other nests. Esker focused on the water, her spear hovering just centimetres from the surface. There was a cry from somewhere above her, the eagle's call, and, so long as the bird was with her, she didn't feel afraid. Minutes passed, and, just as Esker was beginning to think perhaps there weren't any salmon swimming in the river, a shot of silver scales flashed beneath the surface. She launched her weapon, but, in her excitement, it wasn't just the spear she thrust forward. Her whole body went crashing into the icy water too. Quickly, she emerged, eyes and mouth wide with shock, and scrambled up onto the bank. The eagle had now landed and stood just a few metres away, and, though Esker wasn't sure whether birds could look unimpressed, she felt that this one did. She scowled at it. I suppose you'd have known better. The eagle glanced at the hideaway, then back to the river, and Esker didn't need to speak eagle to understand what that meant. Get dry, come back, try again. A short while later, Esker emerged from her hideaway, dry and warm. But it was nearing midday now, and she still hadn't caught a fish. She walked along the bank and, just as she was getting ready to jump onto the rock in the middle of the river, the eagle squawked. Esker followed its gaze towards the sun, and realisation slowly dawned. "My shadow," she murmured. "It will scare the fish." She wandered a little further downstream until she reached a point where the bank was low and the ice had melted from the edge. She knelt down in the snow and waited, and, a few metres away, the eagle waited too. After several minutes, though, Esker grew stiff and she shook out her legs and changed position. The eagle hissed and Esker went back to waiting. When 10 minutes passed and still no fish emerged, Esker thumped her spear down in the snow. "It's no good!" But the birds didn't move. It stayed exactly where it was, its feathers tucked into place, its eyes locked onto the river. Esker sat despondently beside the bird, the seconds drifting into minutes, and she began to notice the silence around her. The whole valley was cloaked in quietness, but the longer she waited and listened, the more the silence spoke. Water murmured, river ice groaned, wings whirred, and a weasel scampered up a tree. She had somehow overlooked all this before, and Esker wondered then whether there was more to being a hunter than being big and strong. Perhaps it was just as important to be still, to listen keenly, and to see into the heart of things that most people missed. It took over an hour to catch her first fish, but when Esker lifted the salmon out of the river on her spear, her face glowed with pride. "I did it," she laughed. "I actually did it." The eagle ruffled its feathers, and Esker found herself wishing that Flint had been there to see this too. She tried to remember the ritual he told her about. "Thank you, North Star," she whispered, holding the fish up in her hands and glancing at the sky. "Wherever you are up there, and thank you, little fish, for choosing to submit your life to me." She paused. She felt there should be more somehow. "It was especially kind of you because I was getting really cold and a little bit uncomfortable sitting out here on the snow. So you just came along at the right moment. Thank you very much. And I hope..." The eagle hissed, so Esker decided perhaps it was time to wrap up the ritual. "That I have honoured the bond between animals and tribes, even though I'm not strictly in a tribe yet." She gutted the fish as she'd seen Flint do, and, with the eagle flying above her, she walked back to the hideaway. Esker was surprised to see the bird swoop into the open behind the ice and watch her from the platform as she cooked the fish on her stove. But she didn't shut the door or pretend the eagle wasn't there. Instead, she talked as she cooked, feeling glad of the bird's silent presence. "If you're going to stick around," Esker said, "I'll need a name for you." The eagle yapped, and Esker suddenly wondered whether it was annoyed. "Not because you're a pet," she added quickly, "more because you're here, and I'm here, and..." She wanted to blurt out that she was lonely and that she was scared to go to sleep because her heart ached even in her dreams, but instead she concentrated on turning the fish. "It would be nice to know your name." The eagle yapped again, and Esker thought she might have misread the sound because before, now that she listened, she could hear the softness at its core. "It should sound wild, this name." Esker cut the fish in half, the kind of word the wind might use if it could speak. She looked up. "Because you're like the wind, you know, fast and free and fierce." She thought about the eagle showing her the hideaway and teaching her to fish. "You're kinder than the wind, though." She edged forward and placed half of the fish on the rock outside her hideaway. The eagle stayed where it was, and it was only when Esker looked away and began to eat her own portion that the bird tucked into its share. As they ate, Esker glanced at the eagle now and again. The wound from the snare was healing already, and, as the minutes drew on, Esker felt something familiar stir inside her. The bird was proud and strong, but it was also protective, of her at least, and its character felt like a trait she'd once known. A memory flickered, then slipped from Esker's grasp. But a word remained, a name that was unmistakably female, and that, to Esker, really did sound like the language of the wind. "Balafan," she whispered, and at the name, the eagle looked up and turned round, as if it had been waiting for Esker to say that word from the very first moment they met.